Hi, it's Stephanie with Sew Make It. We're just going to pick up where we left off with the NCW using the directional fabric. So let's get started. I'm going to just lay out the piece of fabric that I want for the lining. And then I'm going to lay face down my exterior fabric. I'm going to take the whole piece that I have folded in half. Oh, I need some more tape. And I'm going to line up the line, the halfway mark, with the center seam of the fabric that I've sewn together. And I did cut just a hair larger when I did the half cut. With this pattern, because I wanted to make sure that my pieces matched up perfectly. So I'm just going to cut these out together. So I'm just going to take my rotary cutter. I'm just going to go around the pattern. Start over here, and whatever direction you're comfortable in cutting in is fine. I'm just going to get rid of this piece that's hanging off here so that I don't pull it. See if I missed anywhere. Got a little shred over here that I missed. So now I have my exterior and my interior. Again, the interior piece isn't real visible, so you'll see more of that later. So here are the strips of fabric that I have for the credit card slots. I'm going to put the interfacing on the back. I like to do the interfacing about a half to a quarter of an inch in from each side. I don't make it go all the way to the edge. It just reduces bulk when I'm sewing them in the body of the wallet. I have applied the Pellon interfacing. Again, when you apply it, it has a shiny side, and that's the side where the glue is. And that's what's going to go along the back of your fabric. And then I'm just going to take my fabric, I'm going to line it up on my cutting mat. I know I have straight cuts, so I'm lining up the top and the sides, and I'm just going to make some marks. I'm going to come 2.5 inches down, 1, 2.5. And I'm just using the grid marks on my ruler to mark the fabric. So I'm going to do 2.5 inches, then I'm going to use my ruler from that line and go down 1 3/4 inch, just lining everything up straight, using the grid lines on my cutting mat and the lines on my ruler to make sure I keep everything straight. Then I'm going to go down 2 1/4. And I'm going to go down 1 3/4. And I'm going to go down 2 1/4. I was in the zone and didn't realize my battery had died, but I basically just finished marking the fabric and I did an accordion style fold to form the credit card slots. What I've done at this point is I've taken the credit card slots that we prepared. You saw that I marked them and then I folded them. I just folded the top out of the way and I top stitched, and then I folded the next one out of the way, I top stitched, I folded the next one out of the way, and I top stitched. So now I'm ready to take it and trim the length to match what the pattern calls for. I did make adjustments to the pockets because the pattern only calls for one pocket, and I'll share that information with you on how I chose to do that. But if you purchase the pattern, the credit card slots, I'm doing exactly as she advises. I've seen a video which I thought was really nice, where they just made extra long or extra wide credit card slots and then they cut them in half. When I tried to do that, mine turned out a little wonky and they weren't straight and I just didn't like it. I'm sure if I tried it a few more times I would have gotten it, but wasting time for the results that I got, wasting the time to get everything straightened up, it was just easier for me to go ahead and cut 2 pieces and just do it with the shorter length like the pattern calls for. That's completely up to you. There's lots of videos out there on the NCW, so lots of different ways to do things. So now I've trimmed the credit card slots to the measurement that's called for in the pattern so that they're both the same width and height, and I'm just going to place them right sides or pretty sides together, and we'll have some credit card slots. I'm going to sew this together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we'll put the backing on it, and the credit card slot portion will be done until it's time to put it in the wallet. So I did forget to cut this, so before I sit down at the machine I am going to cut the fabric backing for the credit card slot. So I know I have a straight edge here. I'm just going to cut the width that's suggested, or the width and length that's suggested in the pattern. Now in the pattern, she suggests that you use an interfacing on this piece. And the ones that I've made, I did not. I did not, for the simple reason that there's a lot of thickness that we're going to sew through in a few minutes, and I'll show you. My machine doesn't like it. It fights me, so it really doesn't affect the body of the wallet. It doesn't affect the wallet being sturdy and thick enough. It holds its shape. I found that if I leave it out here, I'm just fine, because I have the thickness of the interfacing on this, all the folds that go into the credit card slots, and of course follow the pattern if you want. Try with, try without. I don't usually leave interfacing out of something that's suggested. Sometimes I put more interfacing in, depending on what my experience is with it. But this has worked fine for me. Hopefully it will for you as well. Okay, I'm back at the machine. And I have my 2 credit card slot pieces. I'm placing them right sides together. And I'm going to stitch along the bottom. And you can tell it's the bottom because you want the opening for the credit card slots to be facing up. So I'm just sewing with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just gonna get it in there and make sure I'm lined up fine. And I'm gonna back stitch at the beginning and the end. And then I'm just gonna take this to the iron for just a second, and I'm going to press this seam open just so that it's going to lay flat for me, and then we'll mark it, and I'll show you how I put my center divider lines in. So I'm back. I just pressed the seam open so it's going to lay nice and flat, reduce some of the bulk when we're sewing together in a little while. But at this point, I'm just going to mark the center line. It's 8 inches across. So at 4 inches, I'm just using chalk to make my guideline. This pastel fabric, the chalk isn't the easiest to see, but the darker things that I have to mark wood stain. This chalk will just come right out and I can see it. Just mark something that you can see. Put the markings right there, and I'm just going to use that as a guide, and I'm going to stitch from the top of one side, and I'm going to kind of back stitch a few times at the top of each pocket just to keep it from coming down. There's going to be a lot of wear and tear pulling cards in and out, but I'm going to stitch from the top to all the way down to the other top, because these are going to be tops. It's going to be folded up kind of like a burrito or a taco shell or something. So they're going to be facing up when they're within the wallet. So let's go ahead and sew that together. So I'm just going to start, kind of unfolds at the bottom, so you just make sure that you have folded up there in a minute. I'm just going to sew slowly because there's a lot of layers there. I'm just going to continue all along the side, and when I come to the middle seam, I want to make sure that my other folds didn't get caught and straightened out or what have you, because I want to make sure that I catch those folds so that my pockets will stay divided correctly. So I'm just sewing it straight across, and then I'm going to back stitch at the top of each slot. And then I'm done. I'll just trim my threads from the beginning. Now this is what we have. We have the divided seam, back stitched here a few times so that that seam doesn't pull with the wear and tear. I'm just going to take a scrap piece of fabric that I have laying here and just kind of wipe the chalk off. It's better to kind of get it off now if you've made marks, because later it's going to be in the wallet and it's just a little hard to get to. So I can't see any more chalk. It looks alright. Now I have another piece of fabric that's going to form the back of the slip pocket. Again, I'm just showing you where each piece is going to be when you get the fabric together. So we're going to make we've made the credit card slots. And this is probably not the best one to show you on. Let me grab another one that's a different color. Okay, so this one's it's got some different fabrics on the inside, so this is a better one to show you. This piece of fabric that we're sewing here is going to be on the back of the credit card slot. So it's going to just be the lining of that slip pocket, which will be on both sides. So I've got avocados on this one. So it doesn't really show a lot on the exterior of the wallet, but it is nice to have something somewhat coordinating. I've got palm trees and some reliefs that I'm going to put with this. It actually came in the same collection. So, and I'm just going to line it up, the top and the bottom. Just going to pop a couple of clips. You can pin whatever works best for you. And just line it up. My sides match, my top matches, and my bottom matches. I'm just going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I think most stuff on this wallet, I think she's written as a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Back stitch at the beginning and the end, and just sew straight across. I just didn't backstitch. That's okay. It's going to be caught up in another seam. So I'm just doing the same thing on the other side. 1/4 inch seam allowance. Almost done with the credit card slots. We're almost done for now. So now you have it, it's looking like this. You see all the folded edges. Doesn't look very pretty, but we're gonna just turn it like a little tube. And then I like to take it to the iron and I just press this seam down and press this seam down, and then I'll fold it back to get a nice straight edge, and I'll top stitch. It's just nicer looking whenever you press it out a little bit. So let me go to the ironing board for just a moment and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've just pressed this out. I'm gonna just top stitch. And then I'm gonna just turn it around and top stitch the other side. So there we are. We have the credit card slots completed. I have seen some people, and I've done it. It doesn't really help me, so I don't do it. But you can just take, if you want it to, you can kind of just stitch across the credit card slots, just like a basting stitch to hold them in place. I haven't found that it's been necessary for me, so it's just something that I don't do, but you definitely can. But for now, I'm gonna stick this to the side